everyone. Welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, the podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters. With your questers, Josh and Dan, I'm Dan.
And I'm Josh.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things quizzical, because we're going to have like our umpty billionth, I don't know.
Diving into the mailbag. And I'm all hepped up because we were just...
We had a lively discussion.
We had a lively discussion before we hit record. A discussion that we have sort of had on the show before. We got talking about how bullshit AI is.
Exactly.
LLMs.
So if you have any questions for us about anything, please contact us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. Like we're going to talk about this episode, everybody else already emailed us, so we're going to get to those. Any announcements or anything you want to start with before we just dive right in?
Not that come to mind, no.
Fair. Okay, so this one is from Ely. And I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You've told me how to do it, and it's been a while, so I'm sorry if I get it wrong. I'm trying. Greetings! Can you explain more on the lore behind the singing or flying to Scrang? In my world, I was thinking it's happening because the magic levels are going down.
I'm assuming that the singing aspect of that question refers to the language that the Kastulami, which is the... actual term for the winged to Scrang, because it says in the in Denizens 1 that the language that they have is more musical and isn't the same to Scrang tongue that the other Riverborn to Scrang have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume that because I'm not aware of any that are just singing to Scrang.
Fair.
But the winged to Scrang, the Kastulami, there's not a whole lot of information about them. There's the information that's in Denizens 1 and that's repeated in probably Namegivers of Barsay from 3rd edition and a couple of other places. Why it's happening is sort of a mystery that hasn't been explored in the setting. I don't think it's because of the falling magic level. I think attributing much of anything to the falling magic level on the timescales that we're dealing with in Earthdawn doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because the slope of that decrease, right, if we're going to assume that it doesn't do weird, funky things,
yeah,
it's about 2,500 years, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
And just to set arbitrary values, if we set 100 as the peak of the magic and 0 as the end of the magic cycle and the magic effectively goes away,
yeah,
you've got essentially 1% of 2,500. So like every 25 years, the magic is going to drop 1%. If my math is right.
I think so. Yeah, that's very, very gradual.
That sounds right. So it is a gradual, long-term change that is also has been actually not decreasing at all for the past couple hundred years.
It's stabilized.
Partway through the Scourge, the magic level stabilized, and there's no indication that it has really dropped at all since then. So I personally don't like the notion of, oh, there are things that are happening because the magic level is dropping.
Dwindling.
I don't think that at the scale we're operating on in terms of the Earthdawn setting, that that's something that would have an effect. I think it's more likely that the Kastulami bloodline within the Tiskrang, something may have been done before the Scourge to set that dormant so that they could get through the Scourge in the similar way that the Tiskrang themselves were largely in hibernation throughout the Scourge. I think there's probably some kind of magical stuff that was going on with the Kastulami because they might not have otherwise been able to survive the Scourge without going into their own kind of dormancy within the Tiskrang bloodline, and now that the Scourge is over, the bloodline is sort of returning. That's sort of my headcanon on that.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
But it's not something that has been explored in any particular depth, because the Kastulami population is actually relatively small, even in relation to the Tiskrang population, which is not huge in Barsave.
Yeah, fair enough. So, next question, same emailer. Hi. On Legends and Folk Tales, do you think the Tiskrang and Windlings originated from humans?
No. I've answered that multiple times on the podcast as well as in other places.
Fair.
To me, it doesn't make sense that the Tiskrang or the Windlings or the Obsidimen are actually awakened variants of human stock, the way that elves and orcs and dwarves and trolls are.
Yeah.
Windlings, possibly, because they are still humanoid and gestate, like they have children the same way that mammals do.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's mentioned in, I think, Denizens 1 in the human section, where it's talking about this weird theory that all of the name-giver races were originally human when there was no magic, and that, you know, when the magic returned, humans shrunk down to be windlings or whatever. I don't think that's the case with windlings. I don't think that it is with Tiskrang, because Tiskrang are
Reptilian.
oviparous.
Yeah.
Not just that they're saurian/reptilian, but also that they lay eggs, which is a very different reproductive
Species.
cycle
Yeah.
compared to humans.
Mammals. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are monotremes. There are mammals that do lay eggs, like the platypus, the echidna. Like, there are some that do.
Yeah.
But I just think overall, the fact that you've got a reptilian/saurian species that lays eggs and has this weird biological process where they don't express their biological sex until puberty.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I really like them,
Yes.
but it is sufficiently distinct in multiple ways from human reproduction, human, elf, dwarf, orc, like from those reproductive cycles, for me to say, I don't think they're from the same stock. And Obsidimen, similarly, they're like a completely wackadoodle. They don't have biological reproductive sex, period. Let alone the fact that they've got their, well, they can have gender.
No, I said they barely have gender.
Well, yeah, I mean, they can have gender, but in terms of like biological reproductive sex,
Yeah, no.
that does not exist for them. So those, I would say not.
Fair enough. Second question. There's two more. Does the low birth rate at the end of the fourth age and their lack of existence in the Shadowrun races say anything about that subject in your opinion? I think you may have already covered part of that.
For the Tiskrang, yeah. Certainly in the earlier editions of Shadowrun, Tiskrang and Obsidimen did not appear at all. They're not anything that was hinted at. I do seem to recall that in 5th edition, maybe, might have been in 4th, I don't remember exactly when, but there was a supplement that they did, Year of the Comet, which was the year in the Shadowrun timeline that Halley's Comet returned to Earth. And that the return of Halley's Comet kind of did some magic spiking.
Yeah.
They called it Surge or something weird like that. That was like a forced acronym that did have some results from it that kind of looked like they could be taken as Obsidimen and or Tiskrang. I don't have the book. I've never read it. I've only kind of seen passing references to it.
Fair. No worries.
So, yeah, certainly the low birth rate for the Tiskrang. And again, in Shadowrun, we're also, relatively speaking, very early in the magic cycle. The amount of magic that is available, I would think, while it may be higher than normal because of the Great Ghost Dance and all of that various nonsense, is still nowhere near the levels that would normally, I would think, would be required for Tiskrang to express from whatever was going on. We do know that windlings are already extant in Shadowrun because they appeared in Paranormal Animals of Europe in 1st edition. Yes. I think it was 1st edition. If not first, it was 2nd. Like whenever that book came out, whatever edition it was for.
I remember I only ever got started with 2nd edition, so I'm going to go with 2nd just because. And that's what
I don't have that book on these. It's in the other room.
Yeah, fair enough. Last question. I think you covered this one as well. So did humans get tails and start laying eggs at the arrival of the 4th age? You said no.
No, not in my interpretation of things and how I would handle it in terms of a development standpoint as well as personally.
Let's do this one. This one's from Matthew. So, love it. I am sorry, but this one is directed solely at Dan. I'm looking at introducing some of the legends that you have recorded on the podcast. I got to thinking that it would really be cool to make it come from an NPC that has some bits of you in it. That sounds creepy. I am currently running the Legend of Barsave modules in par length. My PC party consists of an outcast troll warrior, a windling shaman, a human thief, a human sword master, and an orc archer that uses a heavy crossbow. They are in a group called the Luck Runners. So my question to you would be what NPC you would like me to use to be the conduit for these legends. If you could provide at least a race and a discipline for the NPC and I can come up with the rest, anything else you would want to add would be awesome. Matthew. I don't know how to answer that question, really.
Let me rephrase that.
Fair.
If you were to place yourself within the Earth Dawn setting,
Yeah.
if you, Dan, were to be dropped into the Restless Troll in par length as an actual, like, in Barsave character, how would you conceive of yourself in terms of, like, race and discipline? If you were to do yourself, who would you be? What would you be?
50% of the time, I gravitate toward either Obsidian. The other 50% of the time is to Scrang. And that's it. Those are the two characters I've loved playing the most. I really do enjoy those the most. So either one of those two will be fine. The Obsidian character I created at the very start of my career in gaming was a Obsidian weaponsmith.
Okay.
And I think he'd be a good call for you because all those legends would be kind of in the weaponsmith's milieu as far as knowing certain things and weapon history and the whole 9 yards.
And the social,
The other one is the character I really loved playing a lot, and I have a pseudo novella in my head about his exploits. Is my Tiskrang Scout, because I think also he's been places. He's been around. He's heard these things. He's had to investigate these things. He's had to scout ahead for everybody else to know, we're going here because I looked in the research in the Great Library of Thrall and other places like that. So those are the two I would gravitate toward.
There you go, Matthew. So now you've got a couple of options that sort of like Dan would say, yeah, I could see those coming from those characters, and those characters are ones that I kind of played.
Yeah.
There you go.
That'd be me. All your characters are facets of yourself, and that's what I have to go with. So I'm going to go with that one. Okay, this one comes from Chris. Hi, Dan and Josh. Firstly, I love the podcast. I've spent the last year catching up, and it has really rekindled my love of Earthdawn in a big, big way. I've role-played fairly consistently, using many systems, for over 3 decades, but the Earthdawn game I played in the late 90s has always held a special place in my heart and ranks top of my all-time favorite campaigns. Having bought all the 4th edition books, I am just itching to get my group to agree to a campaign. So thanks for all the time and effort you guys put into this. It's very much appreciated. That all goes to Josh and the crew. I had a quick question about the Blades campaign. Well, since we just wrapped that one up a little bit. Knowing my players well, I can foresee a time where, after seeing the trail of destruction and betrayal in their wake, they decide that they can no longer risk entering civilization. Possibly even doing something so drastic as tossing the Blades and themselves into Death's Sea to stop other people suffering from Betrayer's curse. This wouldn't be the first time they turn to noble idiocy after rendering the calculus of harm to innocence. Do you have any thoughts on how to encourage the players to A. Progress the campaign if they decide to avoid interacting with civilization or people? The interludes and general downtime will be difficult if they just stop interacting with NPCs. I'll stop there and let Josh answer that one.
So all of the solutions to this, most of the solutions to this, because I've obviously read this email and I know one of the questions is coming up, one of the aspects of this. But a lot of these really need to be addressed above the table, need to be addressed at a meta level where you are having a conversation with the players about the situation and what's going on, rather than trying to use in-game carrots and sticks to get them to go where you want to go. Because of the darkness and the potential consequences and the things that happen through the course of the story, especially as you get further into the story, as we discussed, I absolutely can see player characters going in a sort of like nihilistic void of, we are doomed, there's nothing that we can do, our mere presence is harming people, and taking like that presumably I'm going to kill myself to make things better for other people, which, as someone who has struggled with depression, as Dan has in his life, has been kind of touched by it as well, in a sense, the horror wins if that's what you do. Like, that's kind of what they're after, is the annihilation.
Mm-hmm. It's going to feed on that pain no matter what.
Yeah, from an in-character, in-setting standpoint, I really think you need to address it above the table as a meta discussion to say, hey, here's what's going on. Here are the situations. Going with the principle of the GM being a fan of the players and their characters. Yes, I am putting you in this difficult situation. Yes, this is an epic challenge for your characters to pursue. And while I am going to have obstacles in your way, I want you to succeed. The story is about how you are breaking the cycle that started centuries ago with this previous group.
Yeah, the Game Master's rooting for you to win.
Yeah. Not even necessarily saying, and I'm going to juggle things so that you win in the end, but understand that, and it may involve tweaking or adjusting some of the stuff that happens and the way that your group interacts with it. So a lot of the situation would be being honest with your players and having the discussion with them saying, I can recognize perhaps that your characters, or there may be characters that have this kind of nihilistic self-sacrifice desire. Oh, well, if I go and jump into Death's Sea, primarily addressing it from a above the table meta point of view is how I like one of the primary ways that I would approach it. Did that address that first point?
I think so, because I can see this going one of two different ways. And this is the Game Master in me. So by all means, Josh, tell me where I am wrong, because I'm going to be wrong on occasion. A lot. As the Game Master in me says, if somebody doesn't want to go along with this, then if they're going to avoid people, then people are going to come to them. So it's one of those, hang out in the woods. Guess what? Picnickers are going to come by, or traveling caravans are going to come by. So the people you're going to avoid will come to you instead.
Yeah. And I understand where you're coming from on that.
Like I said, it's an idea.
Yeah. And I kind of recognize that. But if you're doing a situation where like you're presenting hooks to the players and they are not biting them on them, or they don't want to do them.
Yeah.
I feel that you should step back and say, okay, why don't you want to do this? Do you want to do something instead? There's nothing worse than throwing hooks at the group and them
not taking any of them.
Not taking them, but also not having their own goals or objectives that they're pursuing as well. If you don't want to do anything, if you don't have any goals, if you don't have any objectives, if all you're going to do is, for lack of a better term,
sit there and mope
or be cowardly and not be the adept, not be the hero that you are, that you should be.
Yes.
Why is your character even doing this? Why don't they just go home and start a bakery or something?
Yeah, go retire.
There is a certain amount of buy-in, like the phase that every gamer goes through where they're making their like dark brooding solo.
Yeah. I'm a loner. I'm an outcast.
I'm a loner. I'm an outcast. I don't like anybody. I don't want to go. Trying to make their version of Wolverine without recognizing that Wolverine is on like 15 different fucking teams.
I had the same thoughts. Yeah. I work better alone, do you?
There's a certain amount of buy-in, and like the Game Master can only do so much.
Yeah.
You need to find reasons for your... It's okay for your arc to be, oh, I'm a loner, but I actually secretly want to have friends or family or whatever.
Yeah.
The reason that I am dark and brooding and a loner is because I have been hurt and betrayed by people close to me too often in the past, but I secretly want to have that connection. And so your character's arc is trying to overcome that, and you need to find ways to engage with the material, with the subject, with the premise of the game. If you're not going to do that, you're not playing the character correctly.
So my other thought is this: is that since you brought up the question of if they decide to avoid interacting with civilization or people, how do you keep the game going? The second way I look at this, because the first way was I already said that. The second way is, okay, there's a different challenge, which is now you're writing basically a bank heist or a spy movie. So you're going to take the long way around all those 3 villages instead of interacting with those people and staying overnight. You now need to go through them quickly or around them at nighttime when they're all sleeping and avoid them. And then if you need to go into a certain place like the Great Library, then you need to break in after hours. And so now you're writing a bank movie or a spy movie.
Yeah, I mean,
people, but still getting the same things done. So it's a different level of logistics for you.
There are ways to do it. But at that point, like, the group is taking a different approach than the adventure sort of assumes. Yes. And it's going to require a lot more work on your part to figure out how to get them from point A to point B. I mean, ultimately, there is information that they will need to interact with people in order to learn.
Yeah.
They may have a troubadour in the group that is able to do the item history in order to learn what they need to learn in order to solve the curse, but they're going to need to do something with somebody somewhere, whether that's going and researching themselves in the Great Library or some other location or whatever, but they're going to need to interact with people.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the spy movie bank heist is you're going to show them exactly how unprepared for that they are and that they're better suited just plowing through.
Again, if that's the way that the group wants to handle it, that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's just that it's going to require maybe a little bit more work on your part and on their part in order to achieve their goal. If they want to try and we need to reduce our interactions with people as much as possible in order to minimize the potential harm that we're going to do, okay, like that's a valid approach. Mm-hmm. It just means that you're going to need to do a lot more thinking and planning and preparation to do what you need to do. Yeah. And there may be times where you're just going to have to suck it up and go into town to buy supplies rather than going off and hermiting it in the woods for
weeks on end.
Yeah. So if you are willing to put in the work and your players are willing to kind of put in the work to find alternate solutions, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I just think the nihilistic, oh, well, this is all doomed. I'm going to go throw myself into the lava pit.
And take the blades with me. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was an A where there were like B's and C's.
So yeah, the B is this. Do you have any thoughts on how to encourage the players to follow the suggested "the only way is through" route rather than the terminal "this ends with us here and now" martyrdom route?
So from an in-setting standpoint, there were 2 things, and I kind of mentioned one already, and that is that if you off yourself, the horror wins.
Yeah.
In some respect.
Because it likes that.
Yeah, and that may be something that I would have an NPC mention to them, like to bring that up in character as something. But even more importantly, these are powerful magic items, and there are stories of how if a powerful magic item is destroyed, it will reform. There is no guarantee that chucking the blades into Death's Sea is actually going to solve the problem. It might destroy them there, but there's nothing that will necessarily prevent the item from remanifesting in the same way that kind of Purifier will always show up when it's needed.
Yep.
Or core pattern items will reform if they are destroyed, unless they are destroyed in a particular way that is significant to their story.
Yeah.
Chucking yourself into Death's Sea with the dagger does not necessarily mean that you've solved the problem, because they tried that.
Mm-hmm.
They destroyed one of the daggers that was part of the set. They removed, what's his name? The betrayer from the group. Yeah. They made a whole new group pattern, destroyed his dagger, and that didn't solve the problem, in part because the horror had already infiltrated the pattern as it was.
It infiltrated the pattern. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take it from 8 to 7.
That's information that I might present in setting, in character, is to have a sage or somebody say, you can try that, but that may not work.
And then all you've done is doom everybody else the same way.
But again, going back to the meta, this is a story about your group being afflicted by a curse and how you break that curse, how you break that cycle. And if that's not something that you want to engage with, that's fine.
Yeah.
But, suicide...
It's not a heroic way through this.
Yeah. I don't necessarily consider that to be a heroic end. The character in the depths of despair might be, oh, well, this is the only way for the suffering to end is with my death. Yeah. But again, that echoes too much of depression talk, man. There's a difference between we die in the fight against betrayer in an attempt to break the curse. We go down fighting, or I'm going to throw myself off a cliff.
Yeah. I go down fighting, you go to Valhalla. The other way, you don't. That's me.
From an in-setting standpoint, there's no guarantee that doing that will actually solve the problem.
Agreed.
And 2, present it as if you do that, the horror wins. Do you want the horror to win?
Because that's one way it wins.
Do you want ants? Because that's how you get ants.
Fair. On a final note, I'd like to give special thanks to Josh for talking about his struggles with executive dysfunction in an earlier episode. That stuff does not get talked about much, and it helps to know that there are others out there who have faced similar struggles. Peace and blessings from Chris.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Do the one about the spell, because that's got a relatively quick answer, even though the email is kind of long.
Fair. This is from Nicholas. All caps. Sorry. Greetings, questers. I have a question about one of the spell knacks for my new favorite spell, Pattern Spike. I will not read the entire spell because it's going to take too long. I'm fairly certain... Okay. This spell drives a mystic spike into the target's pattern, disrupting it, and leaves a trailing thread to the spellcaster. The spellcaster uses both hands to pull at the target as though manipulating a skein, forms a point with the fingers of one hand, drives it into their other palm, and blah, 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 blah. Fine. If successful, the effect test determines how much mystic damage is inflicted, and the spellcaster can inflict -2 as a free action to one test the target makes by the end of the next round.
Yes.
Sufficient enough. I'm fairly certain this means it's just how long the caster has to impose that one test penalty, because it says the extended pattern spike reads as follows. When casting pattern spike, the duration is until the end of the encounter and cannot be increased. So the duration cannot be increased under the strain 2 points when casting pattern spike, blah, blah, blah. I'm fairly certain this means it's just how long the caster has to impose the one test penalty. However, am I misreading this? And it's far more powerful, and instead hexes one talent or skill or ability for the entire encounter, theoretically making an opponent useless without killing them with multiple hits that target other talents or skills or abilities. It's not like I've been known to roll 8 extra successes on pattern spike spellcasting tests. That'd be ridiculous. Oh, wait, I have.
So this got asked...
in the Discord.
In the Discord, yeah. This question was also brought to the Discord by Nicholas. Because it was the exact same question. I'm pretty sure it was the same person.
Fair, yeah. That sounds right.
He has already gotten his answer, but I figured we might as well answer it
totally
on the podcast because other people may have this question. The extended duration, basically where it lasts until the end of the encounter, is just how long the character has to trigger that -2 penalty.
Yeah.
So they cast the spell successfully, they take damage, and you have that interrupt. You have that free action to impose a penalty against them. Normally you have to, if you don't use that by the end of the next round, it goes away. With the extended, is that the name of it? With the knack.
Yeah.
You can use that penalty, that interrupt, that free action against them at any point throughout the rest of the encounter. It doesn't allow that penalty to last through the end of the encounter. It just means that you can wait longer to use it.
Fair.
I would say that while you could cast Pattern Spike subsequent times in order to continue to do damage to them, even with the spellcasting knack, I probably would not allow a magician to bank multiple penalties that they could use until the end of the encounter. I think they would still have one that they could use And once they used it, then they could cast it again and get another penalty to potentially spend. But you couldn't like cast the spell 3 times and have 3 -2 penalties banked up to use either in multiple rounds or all at once or something like that. That's sort of getting into you can't have the same named effect stack with itself.
Fair.
So that's the way that I would handle that, is that you get one of the -2 penalties until you use it, and then you can get another one that you could use later.
Fair.
But yeah, it's basically how much time you have until it goes away.
Gotcha. So that was from Mortium. So all good there. Okay, we've got... Well, let's go with another spell knack, because this is from Frank. And Nethermancer's spellcasting knack bleed question. Dan and Josh, I like the appropriateness of the bleed talent knack for Nethermancers found in the 4th edition companion. It is listed as a knack for the spellcasting talent restricted to Nethermancer 3. That is, an adept following the Nethermancer discipline with the spellcasting talent at rank 3 can learn this knack. The action is standard. The game mechanic employed is with a successful spellcasting test, the target suffers -2 wound threshold until the end of the next round, making the target more likely to take a wound. It gets really interesting or special when I read the text. Using this knack is a simple action if the adept uses Nethermancy to attempt weaving threads this round. So this special part of the knack relies on a completely different talent, thread weaving Nethermancy. Now the step for the test is rank plus perception, and perception is the foundational attribute for both spellcasting and thread weaving. Perfect! For lack of a better term, 2 items in the knack stat block are restrictions, Nethermancer 3, requirements, rank 3. Is the 3 here just completely redundant, or are we suggesting that bleed is restricted to the 3rd circle Nethermancers and above with a required spellcasting rank of 3? Standard discipline advancement rules kind of require this anyway. I thought this was a convention used for spellcasting because it is used for multiple disciplines. However, I also found this convention for weaponsmiths with knacks for forge armor and forge weapon. I'm curious if I am missing something. Is this redundant? Are there any knacks that come to mind where the numbers would differ?
So you are kind of missing something. While for the most part, yeah, if somebody's got spellcasting rank 3, they are likely to be 3rd circle in their discipline. The requirement of rank 3 means that you need to have spellcasting rank 3 in order to learn the knack.
Mm-hmm.
Is it restrictions?
Nethermancer 3.
Right, but that's the term for it, right? Is the other one is restrictions?
You are correct.
Okay, so in order to learn a knack, you must have everything that is required, and you must have one. If there are multiples listed, you only need to have one of the restrictions listed.
Yeah.
If we did not have the restriction Nethermancer 3, and all we had was the
requirement rank 3,
that would mean that any discipline could learn that knack, because there is no restriction. There's nothing that restricts it to just being Nethermancers.
Yeah.
And the reason that it's Nethermancer 3 is because it's rank 3. There are cases, and you'll see them in Mystic Paths. A lot of the path knacks are available sooner to the path, but they are also available to a regular discipline at a higher circle. You might see one that's like Woodsman 6, Elementalist 8. I don't know if that's actually one, but you might see something like that.
Yeah.
So a Woodsman could learn it when they're 6th circle, or an Elementalist could learn it when they're 8th circle. They don't have to be both.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some knacks where those numbers may differ.
Yeah.
Because of that. I'm pretty sure there aren't many that are in the companion in the sort of base knacks. But I really like bleed. There's a whole like family, for lack of a better term, of knacks that were created for the companion that are all relatively like low ranking spellcasting knacks, usually like rank 2, 3, 4. There's like probably 3 of them for each of the magician disciplines, maybe 4, that all have this is a simple or free action if they're thread weaving that round. They don't get any bonus successes to impose higher penalties or anything like that. That's kind of the trade-off there. The whole purpose of those, which, while not formally, I've always referred to them as cantrips, is basically to give magician players who don't really like the thread weaving mechanic, because all it seems to do is take up time, where they have a round where they aren't doing anything, gives them something like a little minor effect that they can do at the same time, either to prep for whatever spell they may be about to cast, or to otherwise assist their fellows in some capacity. And the ones that are available sort of flavored based on the discipline. The Elementalist has one that gives like a short-term penalty to physical armor. The Wizard has one that's like a penalty to mystic defense, I think. So there's like 3 or 4 of them for each of the disciplines that all have that kind of effect. I think they're awesome.
Fair. So he goes on, says, it does not explicitly state that extra successes do anything. Should we assume that extra successes are irrelevant for such knacks, or could the duration be extended? Or maybe because its requirement is so low, rank 3, we shouldn't expect much. We know extra successes do not always result in something extra. Also, this doesn't seem to be an effect test, but a binary success test, a simple pass-fail.
Yeah, it's a simple pass-fail. Extra successes don't do anything. Because they're knacks, they are designed to not be as powerful as a spell. They may do an effect that is similar or that is a secondary effect of an existing spell, like Bleed. I think there is an actual spell that also reduces wound threshold.
Yeah, sounds right.
Whether it's in the player's guide or shows up later, I don't recall offhand.
Yeah.
But the whole purpose of these is to give you a minor short-term effect that is a binary pass-fail in terms of whether it goes off or not, that really it's intended to be something that you do while you are weaving threads to cast another spell. If you're going to normally be casting a spell, I wouldn't think that if you are doing your standard action, you could just cast a spell rather than doing Bleed, unless you are in a situation where you really are trying to set up that reduced wound threshold for some reason. But generally, yeah, their extra successes don't do anything on them. If it did, it would say so in the rules. But the intent is, yeah, they're just a pass-fail, yes, no, whether the effect goes in place or not.
Gotcha. Thank you, Frank. If you want to look him up, Hot Dog on Discord. So there you are. All right, last email. This is from Bernhard. And he left a sound file, which I will see if I can plug into the podcast so everyone else can hear this. But he did say, the sound file is telling me the following. Just thought I would also send the written text as I tend to slur some words. So I'm assuming probably English is not his first language. So, that being said, hello there. I just wanted to let you know how much I enjoy hearing the podcast. Since I just discovered it a few weeks back, I am trying to listen to it as much as possible, for it sparks so many great memories of playing and mastering in this wonderful world. I am having questions on several things you mentioned, but since some of them have already been answered in later podcasts that I've gotten to, I will try to catch up ASAP, only to bother you with questions you have not answered already and remarks ideas that were not mentioned yet. As I am still a few years of podcasts behind, going strong towards podcast number 140, you are still safe for a while. But as you also triggered so many questions and games I want to share, prepare yourself for A, brain picking, i.e. questions for Josh. And B, Dan might be in danger of getting a sore throat from reading loads of stories and perhaps also interesting story hooks in case you want to read it out loud on the podcast. Also, I am deeply grateful for the deep lore information. Being kind of a traveling scholar myself and gleaning information from all possible sources Earthdawn related, I tend to integrate that knowledge into my campaign settings. As an explanation, I am more of a I have a world game master and not an I have an adventure game master. So I was never too fond of prefabricated adventures. Myself and the players tend to stray from any given path too often, and it's quite more interesting to go exploring than to just solve the one problem at hand. Yes, we will get it done, but we don't always go to a straight path. And I say we because even when I am the game master, it's a group of friends doing it. So try to be well informed on whence the wind blows, meaning what is going on in the whole of Bar Save, and have the setting prepared and several possible roads to tread on. As Josh mentioned in podcast 134, I'm sure, Josh, you remember that one, he seems to have the same approach to that. I also use other sources of information or for getting ideas, such as Raimund Feist's Mid-Chemia Kellowan Saga, where there is at one point the Sour whose world was destroyed by demons. Those demons feast on the souls of their victims, becoming stronger and more intelligent while doing so. I guess at least some of the demons in Earthdawn work in a similar way, but since you always point out demons are always different, it's just a wild guess, but one that has helped me a lot when planning campaigns and adventures. Okay, now it's getting too long for just a thumbs up, so I will stop right there before my meandering mind strays any further. Please keep up the good work and be prepared for as soon as I will hear you either read this mail on the podcast or play the sound file with me trying to make myself understood. And I'm probably bumbling his email as well, I will know I am not far behind in reaching up-to-dateness, and I will try to finish the long mail with leftover questions and perhaps a few dozen anecdotes, adventure hooks, and stuff. Just one more thing. Thank you for your words, Josh, in podcast 134, Gen Con related. We surely have enough hate to go around. Being a 40s white cis male myself, I speak out of a privileged position, I know. But hate speech and discriminating against others is not to be tolerated. We saw it here in Germany 90 years ago. Didn't go well for all, so just stop it. Accept people being different. That's what makes our world worth living in. I could go on rambling about this for a while, but I guess those who are open for this will have gotten the message by now, and those who won't listen are lost beyond help to the horrors of their own making. Your dedicated listener, Bernie of the Five Names, a.k.a. Kuluket. P.S. Since I'm not native English speaking, I might have mispronounced some words or provoked misunderstandings. If so, I'm deeply sorry. P.P.S. If you still want a pop culture examples for adepts, I have a gauntlet for you. I don't know how popular he is outside Germany, but the actor known as Bud Spencer was featured in several films where he is very much a gauntlet, taking hits, shrugging them off, or kind of collecting them, then one-shotting the opponent with an overhead hammer-like hit on the head. Josh.
Cool. Thank you. There weren't actually any questions in that, which is fine.
We'll take it.
I appreciate I'm, 130 episodes behind you, so I'm not going to
ask a lot of questions yet.
I'm not going to ask questions that you might have already answered, and I will get to them in time. It's always cool to get an email from someone saying, I just discovered the podcast, and I have been doing nothing but listen to it for
weeks on end.
For 3 hours a day for... It's good to know.
It means we're tolerable. We'll take that.
Yeah, we'll take that. I appreciate the email and the kind words for both myself and Dan. We try, both of us, to walk the walk as well as talk the talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering here, this kind of thing made me ponder real briefly, when the show eventually
have to wrap
this up, when we finally decide that we're done, people will still continue to discover the show.
The podcast, yeah.
It will be out there and people will be able to listen to it in the future, and there will no doubt be emails that continue to come in afterwards, and the thought of how I would deal with that in the future is an interesting one, and I don't have an answer for it yet.
We just come back once a quarter, and you and I just chat.
Yeah, every so often, when enough emails have piled up, we'll just get together and do a
email palooza.
Do an email episode. We will, and so it'll be irregular depending on how often things come in, but that's what we'll do.
Yeah, exactly. Because we'll still be Josh will still be the expert. I'll still be the host. We'll just do this every 4 or 5, 6 months and go, oh, look, we have 12 emails to get to. Let's go talk about them. There you go. Any further thoughts on everything we had tonight? Fair enough.
Yeah, we've got another episode to record, so
let's get to it.
Yeah.
So until next time, folks, ask Dan about his NPCs for your legend.
Good night, everybody.